And what's going on, Los Angeles, Bruin Nation, LAFB fam? How we doing? The Madman back with you for all of your UCLA football needs, and wanted to jump on this Sunday morning to recap the victory bell, the crosstown rivalry game where the Bruins ultimately fall 29-10 at the hands of their crosstown rivals, the USC Trojans, in the Los Angeles Coliseum, bringing a close to the 2025 UCLA season at 3-9, and wanted to chat about the game itself, the level of effort, how the Bruins sort of finished the season, and then, of course, moving forward and looking ahead, which is really, I think, the crux of energy and focus that our fan base and our ecosystem should be focused on. But first things first, talking about this game last night, Bruins came in, the line kept changing between anywhere from 20.5 to 22.5. Largest margin in terms of point differential of the USC-UCLA game in quite some time. Bruins a 3-touchdown underdog, and I thought they played extremely valiantly last night and really finished the season with a tremendous amount of effort and intensity and execution. Bruins obviously jumped out early in this game, 10-7 lead at the half. SC kind of got the opening drive for a touchdown, and there was a missed field goal, then there was a blocked field goal by Scott Taylor, and the Bruins, I thought, did a phenomenal job in the first half of this game playing keep away. SC really only had 3 possessions the entire first half. Bruins had 2 time-consuming drives, great touchdown drive that Nico found Gilmore on 3rd and goal, and then just really nicely, methodically driving down the field right before the half, and Bagani kicking that field goal. And at 10-7 in the half, you walked in thinking anything could happen there. I thought Jerry Neuheisel called a great game, wanted to get the ball out quickly of Nico's hands. It was a lot of bubble screens. It was a lot of throws to the backs in the flats, trying to find the tight ends. Really, really short passes, and, wanting to get the ball out quick, wanting to get the ball out horizontally. And then I thought UCLA had their best rushing game of the season since that Penn State game, to be honest with you, and it carried over into that Michigan State game as well. But that 2-game stretch, since then, this was probably UCLA's best rushing performance, going for north of 100 yards on over 4 yards a carry. So this much maligned offensive line, I thought, more than held their own against USC in this particular ball game. Unfortunately, the second half is when things turned. I thought UCLA was still in a really good spot with about 5 minutes to go in the third quarter with the ball up 10-7. One, I think, turning point was really on that third down where Nico got sacked by Jide Abasari of USC. UCLA had to punt, pin SC deep, and then SC goes 91 yards for a touchdown there. Iamaleava started getting a little bit more comfortable. But even at 14-10 there, SC scored right before the end of the third quarter. UCLA had the ball. Berger ripped off that 23-yard run to start the fourth quarter. UCLA had the ball first and 10, 38-yard line with the ball starting in the fourth quarter. You still felt like this was anybody's game going into the fourth quarter. And then I thought one play, and we love Titus so much, and he did a phenomenal job kind of recovering on the subsequent possession. But that 3rd and 6 with about 13 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, that drop was a killer drop for this game. And then it just felt like, the snowball effect really took place. That drop on 3rd and 6, UCLA punts. Makai Lemon does a phenomenal job on the punt return. Crowd starts getting involved. Jacoby Lane makes a huge play. And then in the blink of an eye, it's 21-10. And then that subsequent possession for UCLA still did a really nice job moving the ball down the field. But then those old habits reared their ugly heads again. Penalties, false starts, just couldn't really get out of their own way. They were able to convert 1 3rd and 22 with Titus doing a phenomenal job getting that first down. But that second 3rd and 22 was a little bit too much to ask. SC kind of gets a garbage time touchdown on a long run, and that's your ball game at 29-10. But it was a game where I think for UCLA fans should be very proud of the level of effort and the product that UCLA put on the field, considering how this season went. And they battled their tails off to the very end. And I think it speaks to Tim Skipper. It speaks to Coyle. It speaks to Neuheisel. And it also just speaks to the level of character of these players. So it was an interesting game for sure. And I thought, Nico Iamaleava, even playing this game, with neck spasms, and not just playing it, but playing it so effectively. 27 for 38, 200 yards, and a touchdown. He also had a couple of really nice scrambles, had a very, interesting kind of scramble there at the end of the first half, took a huge shot, got right back up. His toughness is absolutely unquestioned. And to play a game for a 3-8 team where there is no bowl game, there really is no consequence to potentially playing this game outside of personal pride, personal accountability, and doing the right thing. I think Nico just had an incredibly resilient season, and we're just so proud of him. And look, there's a reality of the situation here that he is a very desired quarterback, and the talent is undeniable. And anyone that can't see the talent of Nico Iamaleava, I don't think you're really watching football. This was a product of his supporting cast just not being there. From an offensive line perspective, from sort of a weapons perspective, it was just a very tough season. He battled valiantly, and I think now he has his options open. And given where this program is going, this is going to be a rebuild in 26, like we talked about. Where Nico Iamaleava chooses to go to school next year, I think is going to be a very interesting storyline, because I think one good season in a more stable, mature situation, and Iamaleava is going to play himself into a high-round NFL draft pick 12 months from now. And I don't think there's sort of any question about it. But overall, I thought the Bruins did a phenomenal job kind of competing. SC didn't cover. 29-10, I think, was a misnomer. This game was a lot closer than people will sort of look at in the morning in terms of the box score. This was a 10-7 game with a little over a minute to go in the third quarter. This was a 14-10 game going into the fourth quarter with UCLA having the ball. So this was anybody's game going into the fourth quarter, and just ultimately the lack of discipline, the lack of continuity, and I think the lack of success and that belief wasn't quite there for the Bruins in the fourth quarter. But now we turn the page. This season finally comes to a close. 2025 season kind of closes at 3-9. It was a tale of sort of three seasons, that 0-4 start, obviously the 0-3 start, and then the firing of DeShaun Foster. There was that recovery game against Northwestern that we kind of let get away, and then the magic of the 3-game winning streak for a second consecutive year. Still one of the storybook games of the college football season, UCLA upsetting Penn State, and what that kind of sent Penn State into in terms of a true tailspin, being able to bounce back from that and follow it up with wins against Michigan State and Maryland. But then ultimately it was sort of a regression back to the mean, if you will. You sort of are who you are once the emotion of kind of being Cinderella wears off after a few weeks. Then it sort of goes back to who's your roster, what's your level of talent, what's your level of execution, and how can you sort of stack performances week over week. And unfortunately, Bruins closed the season with a 5-game losing streak and end the campaign 3-9. But now the season actually begins, because from now until the next meaningful game that UCLA plays, there's just so much at stake. And first and foremost, who is the head coach going to be of UCLA football moving forward? Wanted to get on to talk about my impressions of the latest. We talked about this a couple days ago, right at the beginning of the Thanksgiving holiday. And all indications are that the Bruins are really centering on Bob Chesney as being option number one here. And I think it's very simple at this point. UCLA wants Bob Chesney. Bob Chesney, I think, wants Penn State. Penn State doesn't want Bob Chesney. And I think that's really what's happening in terms of this situation. Penn State feels like they want to get a coach with, quote unquote, a bigger splash or a sexier name. They're walking away from James Franklin. They're walking away from a situation where they were a perennial contender in the Big Ten and, were just in the college football playoff. They're looking for a splashy hire, perhaps a splashy NFL coordinator or someone with previous NFL experience. They've gone after some names, Kurt Cignetti, and then Cignetti signs that extension with Indiana. They went after the Vanderbilt coach. Vanderbilt's coach signs an extension very quickly thereafter. Went after the Missouri coach. Missouri coach signs an extension immediately thereafter. So everyone that they're sort of going after is signing an extension. Matt Rule at Nebraska, there was talk about Penn State wanting him. Nebraska signs that extension. So everyone is sort of playing that defense in terms of what Penn State's going to do. And so I think for whatever reason, they believe that they need a sexier, splashier name than Bob Chesney, which is just fine for us Bruin fans, because this guy knows how to coach. He knows how to build a program. There's a Signetti effect here. He's going to bring a ton of players from James Madison. So let's keep our fingers crossed that Penn State continues to miss the forest for the trees, ends up picking someone else, and it's headed that way, and the Bruins get their guy in Bob Chesney. Because if Bob Chesney shows up, the board resets, and there is a new vibe, there's a new culture, there's really an opportunity to start completely fresh. So very excited there about where this Chesney situation nets out. I would anticipate a decision is going to be made between the next 48 and 72 hours, and we'll have it all covered for you here on the one and only LAFB network. So job one is Chesney. Job two, of course, is recruiting. And this staff has just done a marvelous job holding on to so many recruits given the instability. I mean, think about this. National Signing Day is December 3rd, which is this Wednesday. National Signing Day is in 3 days. UCLA still doesn't have a coach, hasn't had a coach for the vast majority of this season, and UCLA has been able to hold on to about 80% of their class. I mean, it's absolutely remarkable and speaks to a couple of things. One is that we've got some really good guys and guys and gals and really good talent in the recruiting office. And number two, all you need is the proper direction and the proper leadership. And UCLA is still a name where kids want to go to for everything that it represents, both on the field as well as off the field. So the second item that we have to really keep our eye on is the ability to continue to retain the players that we have in this 2026 class. And then are there some guys that we can add to here in the final 48 to 72 hours, which is such a staple of National Signing Day because you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids. So you got Chesney, you got recruiting. Number three, now the question is going to be, what happens to some key players now that the season is over? We talked about Nico. I have to be very honest, given Nico's level of talent, given the fact that Nico's 3 years into his college career, I have a very hard time believing Nico Iamaleava comes back to UCLA. I think he needs a situation, in all fairness, in his best interest. If I was his dad, if I was his mentor, if I was an advisor, if I was someone that was in the inner circle of the Iamaleava family, I would really encourage Nico to find a situation where his talents could get exemplified. I could see a world where Nico Iamaleava replaces Fernando Mendoza at Indiana. I could see a world where Nico Iamaleava replaces Chambliss at Ole Miss. If Chambliss goes on with Lane Kiffin to LSU, I could see a world where Nico Iamaleava goes to potentially Michigan. You know, if Lane Kiffin takes Underwood to LSU with him, I could see Nico Iamaleava play in Michigan next year. I really am very high on Nico and what he can do, and I think Nico deserves to be in a program that's in a more stable, mature situation and where his talents can really be exemplified and he can maximize his stock next year. So I have my doubts about being able to retain Nico. The other, I think, name to keep an eye on is what's Quasi Gilmer going to do. Quasi Gilmer, I think the talent is undeniable there. Again, because this offensive line was so challenged, you really had two situations. One was a quarterback that didn't have enough time to throw the ball down the field and really be able to showcase his talents. But also on the flip side, as a wide receiver, you're not able to completely extract the extent of your route tree. You know, if you're able to do things from an intermediate standpoint, you're able to do things from sort of a long game standpoint, but also more complex routes, it becomes extremely challenging if you don't have that offensive line, because everything then becomes bubble screens, everything becomes kind of short digs, inside slants, quick out routes. And so you're not able to sort of showcase all of your talent. So Gilmer is going to have a decision to make here. Where does he want to come back for one more year, be unquestioned wide receiver number one? TMA, what a great career he's had. We're so proud of him. We love him so much. He's a Bruin for life. TMA now graduates. We're going to see what Mikey Matthews does. Mikey Matthews, in a lot of ways, was a package deal with Nico. He liked Nico's game, and so he came to UCLA. I have a sense that if Nico goes in the transfer portal, I think Mikey Matthews is going to do the same. I don't necessarily think that Mikey Matthews is going to chase wherever Nico goes, but I think the fact that Nico came was very attractive to Mikey Matthews. So I think TMA, Mikey Matthews are off the board. I think Flores stays. I think there's an opportunity for Flores to really shine next year as either wide receiver 2 opposite Gilmer or potentially even wide receiver 1 if Gilmer decides to weigh his options. So I think let's keep an eye on that wide receiver room and what Gilmer does. And then I think from a running back perspective, Berger obviously graduates, but I thought Woods had a heck of a game yesterday as well. Woods coming back, Javion Thomas coming back. I think those guys are really talented. It's going to be about sort of pounding the portal for offensive and defensive line talent. So we'll keep an eye on what the receiver room does there. We'll keep an eye on what Nico does. On the defensive side, we've already talked about the guys that are graduating on that front. John Vaughns is also going to be graduating. And then you've got a number of guys in the secondary as well. But you have so much depth in the secondary that I think a lot of guys are going to be coming back. So you have a situation here. Nico, Gilmer are the two that I think you want to keep an eye on from, a retention perspective. And then the fourth element that we really got to be focused on is transfer portal. And, ultimately, how do we replenish this roster? Because obviously we're talking about this 2026 recruiting class. Without a coach, you're going to do the best you can. I think you're going to get some really good players, but you need a couple of cycles to really get that pipeline going. This is a year, 26, where you're really going to have to rely on the portal. So much to really look at there, and we're going to have to go all chips in, particularly on the offensive and defensive lines. I've talked about it a ton. You lose Unije, you lose DeGiorgio, you lose Cortland Ford to graduation on the offensive line, and then on the defensive line, you lose Gary Smith III, you lose Keanu Williams, you use Busic, you use Apu, you lose Keyshawn Bennett. So just a lot of bodies, a lot of guys that were either starters or in your rotation. And then from a linebacker perspective, you lose John Vaughn. So that how you replenish this offensive line and then this defensive front is really going to be critical to keep an eye on. And we're going to have you all covered on all things transfer portal related. So 4 really big storylines. The season feels like it's about to start right now. It's just sort of interesting to say that we washed the 2025 season away. We're going to have a new coach, potentially a new atmosphere and environment. We'll see how this SoFi Rose Bowl situation plays out. And, just a new feel and a new energy, hopefully, for the Bruins going into the 2026 campaign. So, Bruin fans, as crazy as it sounds, we just got done with the 3-9 season. We'll take a kind of a deep breath here over the next couple of days. But between the coach, between National Signing Day, between what our players are going to do in terms of their decisions of the future, between our influx of transfer portal talent relative to our needs, and then finally where we're going to play next year, because this battle between the city of Pasadena and the UCLA athletic department continues. Do we play in SoFi? Do we play at the Rose Bowl? So 5 massive storylines going into the offseason. We're going to be more busy than ever here because as that old saying went in that Nick Cannon movie Drumline where they said, hey, around here, halftime is game time. Well, guess what? Where we are in terms of UCLA football going into the 2026 season, the offseason is the real season. And so the real season is about to begin upon us, and we're very excited about it. So Bruin fans, keep your head up. Be proud. That was a great performance last night. It was an undermatched. They were sort of an overmatched team. Tough talent year for us, but the way they battled, I think everyone should be really proud of how they represented UCLA, this great university, and how they balled out for the rivalry under very extreme circumstances, under a ton of duress. And so, before I get out of here, gotta pay the bills. Look at the Sleeper app, number 1 sports app in the world today, in the market today, that Sleeper app. You've got real-time chats. You've got live news feeds. You've got all the engagement and the immersive experiences that you could ask for. And on top of that, you have a $100 match bonus if you use the promo code UCLA LAFB. So if you give $100 to the app, you get another $100 for free. 100 becomes 200, and you can do all kinds of things with that. Over-unders, parlays, all various configurations of scores and sports that you're absolutely interested in. So download that number 1 sports app in the market today, that Sleeper app, and tell them the guys from LAFB sent you, and use that promo code UCLA LAFB. So fans, Have a wonderful Sunday, wonderful rest of your weekend, early part of the week. I'm going to jump back now with Thriller as soon as he gets back from Thanksgiving break. We're going to break down National Signing Day, and let's hope, fingers crossed, Bob Chesney is a Bruin here in the next 48 hours, and that's going to get this party started in a very significant way, and the momentum is going to build for 2026. So like I always say, be loud, be proud, be passionate, Bruins. Four's up forever, baby.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.